49 years old, and I'm the only guy at this wedding rehearsal who isn't sleeping with my wife. The thought hit me like a sledgehammer as I watched Dana laugh at something Lionel Burke whispered in her ear. Her hand lingered on his arm just a beat too long, her smile too bright, too intimate for a woman supposedly planning her daughter's wedding with a family friend. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Michael, you're not paying attention. Dana's voice cut through my fog of realization. She stood beside the makeshift altar in the community center, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the fluorescent lights. At 46, she still turned heads, and she knew it. Sorry, just thinking about the logistics. I forced a smile and gestured at the space around us. Making sure everything flows properly tomorrow. Lionel chuckled, adjusting his expensive watch. That's our Michael, always the architect. Don't worry, buddy. I've got everything under control. Buddy. The word made my teeth clench. Lionel Burke had appeared in our lives 6 months ago like a well-dressed plague. Philanthropist, he called himself. I called him a 48-year-old con artist with too much cologne and a smile that never reached his eyes. Dad, what do you think about the flower arrangements? Ava approached, looking stunning in her simple rehearsal dress. At 22, she was everything good in my life. Smart, genuine, pursuing her master's degree in social work. I'd raised her since she was 7, and she was more mine than Dana's relatives ever were. They're perfect, sweetheart. I squeezed her shoulder. Your mom and Lionel have excellent taste. Ava's smile faltered slightly. She'd noticed, too. The late-night phone calls Dana thought I couldn't hear. The new clothes, the expensive dinners she claimed were client meetings. The way she'd started working weekends, always with Lionel's real estate development projects. Michael, we need to discuss the seating arrangements, Dana called out, but she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were locked on Lionel, who nodded toward the back of the room. I watched them walk away together, heads bent in conversation. Dana's friends, Monique and Tara, exchanged knowing looks from their perch near the gift table. They'd been whispering all evening, shooting glances my way like I was the punchline to a joke I hadn't heard yet. You okay, man? Will appeared at my elbow, carrying 2 beers from the cooler. My oldest friend looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, which made 2 of us. Just peachy. I took a long pull from the bottle. Nothing like watching your wife plan your stepdaughter's wedding with her boyfriend. Will nearly choked on his beer. Jesus, Mike, you sure about that? Sure as architectural blueprints. I gestured toward where Dana and Lionel stood, huddled near the exit. Look at them. She's practically glowing. What are you going to do? I watched Dana laugh at something Lionel said, her hand finding his chest in a gesture so familiar it made my stomach turn. I'm going to make sure someone pays for this open bar. The rehearsal dinner was held at Marcello's, an upscale Italian place downtown that cost more than my first car. Lionel had insisted on picking up the tab, of course. The generous family friend, always there when you needed him. I sat at the head table, watching Dana work the room like a politician's wife. She moved from group to group, charming Ava's college friends, schmoozing with my former colleagues from the architecture firm. The firm I'd been pushed out of 3 months ago when the partnership dissolved. Another stress point in our marriage that Dana seemed to handle by spending more time with Lionel. Ladies and gentlemen, Lionel stood, tapping his wine glass with a fork. The room quieted. I'd like to say a few words about this beautiful couple we're celebrating tomorrow. He launched into a speech about love and commitment while I studied the faces around me. Ava looked uncomfortable. Dana's mother, Lucille, nodded approvingly from her seat near the window. She'd always preferred men with money. Dana herself gazed at Lionel like he was reciting poetry instead of wedding cliches. And I have to say, Lionel continued, his voice warming. Dana has been absolutely incredible through this whole process. She's the kind of woman who gives everything to the people she cares about. A true partner in every sense of the word. The room erupted in polite applause. I clapped along, my hands making hollow sounds that matched the feeling in my chest. After dinner, I found myself on Marcello's back patio, nursing a whiskey and watching traffic crawl down 5th Street. The city lights blurred together, and I tried to remember when I'd stopped being the man Dana looked at the way she looked at Lionel. Dad? Ava slipped outside, wrapping her arms around herself against the cool evening air. Hey, kiddo, shouldn't you be inside enjoying your party? She sat down beside me on the wrought iron bench. I wanted to check on you. You seem distant tonight. I studied her face in the dim patio lighting. She had Dana's eyes but my stubborn chin. Just tired. It's been a long few months. Is it Mom and Lionel? The question hung between us like smoke. I could lie, protect her from the ugly truth on the eve of her wedding, or I could treat her like the intelligent adult she'd become. Yeah, I said finally. It's Mom and Lionel. Ava nodded slowly. I've seen them together, the way they look at each other. I'm sorry, Dad. Don't apologize for your mother's choices. I finished my whiskey. But I want you to know that whatever happens between your mom and me, it doesn't change anything between us. You're my daughter in every way that matters. Tears sparkled in her eyes. I know. And Dad? I'm on your side, whatever you decide to do. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. Let's just focus on getting you married tomorrow. Everything else can wait. But as we sat there in comfortable silence, I was already planning. Lionel Burke thought he was so clever, swooping in to steal another man's wife. Dana thought she was being discreet with her afternoon meetings and secret phone calls. They had no idea what they'd unleashed. I might have been pushed out of my architecture firm, but I still knew how to read blueprints, and I could see the structural weaknesses in their little affair from a mile away. Someone was about to learn that when you mess with a man's foundation, the whole building comes down. The morning of Ava's wedding dawned crisp and clear, the kind of October day that makes you believe in new beginnings. I stood in my hotel bathroom, adjusting my tie and trying to ignore the hollow feeling in my chest. Today was about Ava, not about my disintegrating marriage. The ceremony venue was the old Riverside mansion, a restored Victorian that overlooked the city's main waterway. Dana had insisted on the upgrade from our original choice, claiming Lionel's connections had gotten them a deal. I'd bet my last dollar that Lionel was getting more than a discount. You clean up nice, old man. Will appeared in the doorway of the groom's preparation room, already dressed in his groomsman tuxedo. Thanks. You seen the bride? Glowing. She's in the bridal suite with the photographer. Dana's running around like a general commanding troops. Of course she was. Dana lived for events like this, opportunities to showcase her organizational skills and social connections. The fact that she was doing it all with another man's input just added insult to injury. I made my way through the mansion's ornate hallways, nodding to vendors and guests. The florist was arranging centerpieces in the main ballroom. The caterer's staff bustled around the kitchen. The DJ tested sound levels on his equipment. All of them had contracts. All of them expected payment. All of them assumed the father of the bride was handling the financial details. They were about to learn otherwise. Michael! Dana appeared at my elbow, radiant in her mother of the bride dress. Have you seen Lionel? We need to finalize the payment schedule with the vendors. Haven't seen him. I kept my voice neutral. Everything okay? Fine. He's just handling some of the larger expenses. You know how generous he's been. Generous. Right. I'd done some digging over the past week, using contacts from my architecture days to look into Lionel's finances. The man was leveraged to his eyeballs, using credit and shell companies to maintain his lifestyle. His generosity was funded by borrowed money and creative accounting. Dana, we should talk about the arrangements. I want to make sure I understand who's responsible for what. She waved dismissively. Don't worry about it. Lionel and I have everything handled. You just focus on walking Ava down the aisle. That stung more than she probably intended. Reduced to a ceremonial role in my own daughter's wedding while my wife's boyfriend played host. But I smiled and nodded, filing away another piece of ammunition for later. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Ava looked radiant as I walked her down the aisle, her arm steady in mine. Her fiancé, James, waited at the altar with tears in his eyes. For 30 minutes, I forgot about Dana and Lionel and focused on the joy of seeing my daughter start her new life. But during the reception, reality came crashing back. I was making small talk with some of James's relatives when I overheard Dana's friends gossiping near the bar. She's glowing, Monique said, sipping her champagne. Lionel's been so good for her. About time she found someone who appreciates her, Tara added. Michael's been so distant lately. All that business with losing his job. Lionel says he's going to help her expand her real estate business, open a second office, maybe franchise the operation. My hand tightened around my whiskey glass. Lionel was making plans for my wife's future while I stood 20 feet away at my daughter's wedding. That's when I noticed him. Lionel stood near the gift table, talking quietly on his phone. His expression was tense, worried. He kept glancing around like he didn't want to be overheard. I moved closer, using the crowd as cover. Told you the payment will be there Monday, he was saying. The wedding expenses are covered by the client. It's all legitimate business costs. Client. He was billing someone else for Ava's wedding expenses, using fake invoices to cover his generous gesture while impressing my wife with his financial stability. I pulled out my phone and started recording. No, you don't understand, Lionel continued. The real estate deal closes next week. Dana's handling the paperwork. Once that goes through, we'll have more than enough to cover everything. Dana's handling the paperwork. My wife wasn't just sleeping with this man, she was helping him run some kind of real estate scam. I stopped recording and slipped away, my mind racing. This was bigger than an affair. This was fraud, and Dana was neck-deep in it. The evening's entertainment included dancing, speeches, and the traditional cake cutting. I played my role perfectly, smiling for photos and making small talk with relatives. But inside, I was planning. During the father-daughter dance, Ava whispered in my ear, "You okay? You seem tense." "Just emotional," I lied. "My little girl's all grown up." She squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens with Mom, you'll always be my dad. Don't forget that." Smart girl. She could sense the storm coming. As the evening wound down, I made my move. The vendors were packing up their equipment, and several approached me about payment schedules. The florist wanted to confirm her check would be ready Monday. The caterer needed to process final billing. The DJ asked about his remaining balance. "You'll need to talk to Lionel Burke about that," I told each of them. "He's handling all the vendor payments for this event." "Lionel Burke?" The florist looked confused. "I thought you were the father of the bride." "I am, but Mr. Burke generously offered to handle the financial arrangements. He's the tall gentleman in the gray suit over by the bar." I watched with satisfaction as the vendors converged on Lionel. His confident smile faltered as the florist, caterer, DJ, and photographer surrounded him, all talking at once about payments and schedules. Dana rushed over, her face flushed with embarrassment. "There seems to be some confusion about the billing arrangements." "No confusion," I said calmly. "Lionel told me he was handling everything. I'm just making sure the vendors know who to contact." Lionel's face had gone pale. He was trapped between his lie to me and his promises to the vendors. The real estate client he'd planned to bill probably didn't exist, or at least not in the way he'd described. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," he said, loosening his tie. "Nothing private about it," I replied. You offered to pay for my daughter's wedding. These people need to know when they'll get their money. The scene was drawing attention. Other guests started gathering around, sensing drama. Dana's mother watched with growing alarm. Ava and James looked concerned but confused. "Michael, please," Dana hissed. "Not here. Not tonight." "When then, Dana? When were you planning to tell me about your business arrangement with Lionel? About the real estate deals and the client billing?" Her face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Lionel's voice filled the immediate area, talking about billing clients for wedding expenses and Dana handling paperwork. The vendor's expressions shifted from confusion to anger. The florist stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Are you saying this wedding was paid for with fraudulent billing?" "I'm not saying anything," I replied. "I'm just a proud father who thought a generous friend was helping with expenses. If there are questions about the billing arrangements, you'll need to take those up with Mr. Burke." Lionel looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Dana grabbed his arm, whispering urgently in his ear. The vendors formed a tighter circle, demanding immediate answers about payment. I stepped back and watched the chaos unfold. Guests were pulling out phones, recording the confrontation. Ava pushed through the crowd, her wedding dress rustling. "Dad, what's happening?" "Just some confusion about vendor payments, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." But she could see the truth in my eyes. Her mother and Lionel were in serious trouble, and I'd lit the fuse that would blow up their little scheme. "Michael, we need to talk. Now." Dana's voice was desperate. "I think you need to talk to your business partner first," I said, nodding toward Lionel, who was now surrounded by angry vendors demanding immediate payment guarantees. I walked away, leaving them to deal with the mess they'd created. Will caught up with me near the exit. "Jesus, Mike, what did you just do?" "Gave some hard-working people the information they needed about who was supposed to pay them." "And?" I smiled grimly. "Let's see how they enjoy their after-party." The morning after the wedding, I sat in my empty house drinking coffee and reading the newspaper like it was any other Sunday. But the silence felt different now. Heavier. Dana hadn't come home. My phone had been buzzing since 7 a.m. Missed calls from Dana, text messages demanding I call her back, voicemails that grew increasingly frantic as the morning wore on. I ignored them all. Will showed up around 10, carrying a bag of donuts and wearing yesterday's clothes. "You look like hell," I observed. "Thanks. Spent the night at Tara's place trying to get the full story." He collapsed into my kitchen chair. "Mike, what exactly did you stumble into? Tell me what you heard first." Will rubbed his face. "Lionel's in deep shit. The vendors are threatening to call the police about fraudulent billing. Dana's been crying all night, claiming she didn't know about his financial problems. And Monique says there's talk about some real estate deal that might not exist." I poured him coffee. "The real estate deal exists, but not the way they presented it to the vendors." "Meaning?" "Meaning Lionel's been using Dana's real estate license to create fake transactions, billing wedding expenses to non-existent clients, then planning to cover the costs with money from deals that were never real." Will stared at me. "That's fraud. Serious fraud." "Yeah, it is. And Dana?" I shrugged. "Either she's the most naive realtor in the city, or she's been helping him run the scam." My phone rang again. Dana's name flashed on the screen. "You going to answer that?" "Eventually." I let it go to voicemail. "But not until I'm ready." Will studied my face. "You're not done, are you?" "Last night was just the opening move." "I'm no Jason Bourne," I said, "but I do know how to make a man sweat." Over the next few days, I put my plan into motion. 25 years of marriage had taught me Dana's routines, her weaknesses, her social circles, and 3 months of unemployment had given me plenty of time to plan. First, I visited Lionel's office building downtown. The security was laughable, an old badge reader system that accepted any card with a magnetic strip. My expired architecture firm ID got me past the lobby, and the cleaning crew let me follow them upstairs without question. Lionel's office was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, fake awards, photos of him with local politicians and business leaders. His computer was password protected, but his filing cabinets weren't. I spent 2 hours photographing documents, real estate contracts with suspicious terms, invoices for services that didn't exist, bank statements showing transfers between multiple accounts, and most damning of all, a folder labeled Gray Wedding, with detailed expense reports billing everything to something called Riverside Development LLC, a company that existed only on paper. I also found correspondence between Lionel and Dana discussing their expansion plans and how they'd use her real estate license to maximize opportunities. Dana wasn't an innocent victim. She was a willing participant. Wednesday morning, I started making phone calls. Mrs. Patterson, this is Michael Gray. I believe you hired Lionel Burke for some real estate consulting last month? Yes, though I'm not sure why that's your business. I'm calling because Mr. Burke may have some financial difficulties that could affect his ability to complete your project. You might want to verify that any payments you've made are properly secured. I made similar calls to 6 other clients I'd found in Lionel's files, planted seeds of doubt, suggested they verify their contracts and payment arrangements. By Thursday, Lionel's phone was probably ringing off the hook with nervous clients demanding explanations. Thursday evening, I followed Dana to her dinner with Monique and Tara at their usual restaurant. I sat at the bar, close enough to overhear their conversation. He's completely panicked, Dana was saying. The vendors are threatening legal action. His clients are asking questions, and Michael won't even talk to me. What did you expect? Monique's voice was sharp. You've been flaunting your affair for months. Did you think Michael wouldn't notice? It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Lionel said he could handle everything quietly. Lionel's a con artist, Dana. Half the women in our circle could have told you that. I almost choked on my beer. Dana's own friends had known what Lionel was, and they'd let her walk into his trap anyway. I need to talk to Michael, Dana continued. Make him understand that I never meant for any of this to happen. Good luck with that, Tara said. From what Will told me, Michael's not in a forgiving mood. Friday afternoon, I put the next phase of my plan into action. I drove to Lionel's apartment complex, a luxury high-rise downtown that probably cost more than my mortgage. His car was easy to spot, a restored 1967 Mustang that he treated like a holy relic. I'd brought supplies, a bag of sugar, a can of sardines, and a can of spray paint. The parking garage was mostly empty, with security cameras that hadn't worked in months, according to the maintenance guy I'd chatted with earlier. The sugar went into the gas tank. The sardines went into the air conditioning intake. And across the hood, in bright red letters, I spray-painted Homewrecker. Then I waited. Lionel appeared 20 minutes later, probably heading out for another fake business meeting. The sound he made when he saw his car was worth every risk I'd taken. What the hell? He ran around the vehicle, taking in the damage. His phone was already out, probably calling the police. I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Nice car. Shame about the vandalism. He spun around, his face flushed with anger. You son of a bitch. You did this. Did what? I just got here myself. Terrible neighborhood crime these days. You think this is funny? I walked closer, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. I think you sleeping with my wife is funny. I think you billing my daughter's wedding to fake clients is hilarious. And I think you're about to discover that this is just the warm-up. Lionel stepped toward me, his hands clenched into fists. He was taller than me, probably stronger, but he'd lived soft for too long. I'd spent 3 months doing construction work to pay bills, and my hands were harder than they'd been in years. You want to hit me, Lionel? Go ahead. But remember that everything you do from now on is going to end up in court when the fraud charges get filed. He stopped, the legal implications sinking in. You don't have any proof. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos I'd taken in his office. Riverside Development LLC, nice company, too bad it doesn't actually exist. His face went pale. You broke into my office. I visited your office. Amazing how much information people leave lying around. A car pulled into the garage, and Lionel glanced around nervously. He was realizing that making a scene in public wasn't going to help his situation. What do you want? He asked finally. I want you to stay away from my family. I want you to stop using my wife's real estate license for your scams. And I want you to understand that if you ever threaten me or anyone I care about, I'll make sure every business contact you have gets copies of those financial documents. I started walking toward my car, then turned back. Oh, and Lionel, you might want to call your insurance company about the car. I hear vandalism claims can take weeks to process. That evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a large man in an expensive suit, probably one of Lionel's associates. Michael Gray. Depends who's asking. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Burke. He'd like you to return some property that belongs to him. I smiled. Tell Mr. Burke that I don't have any property belonging to him. But if he's missing some documents, he might want to check with the police. I hear they're very interested in financial fraud cases these days. The man stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his size. Mr. Burke thinks you might be more reasonable if you understood the situation better. I understand perfectly. Your boss is a con artist who's been using my wife to run real estate scams. Now he's panicking because his house of cards is falling down. I pulled out my phone. Should I call the police now, or do you want to leave on your own? He stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to decide if I was bluffing. Then he stepped back. Tell your boss this is just the warm-up, I called after him as he walked to his car. Inside, I poured myself a whiskey and sat down to plan the next phase. Lionel was rattled, but not broken. Dana was scared, but still loyal to her boyfriend. Time to turn up the heat. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was working in my garage, organizing tools and trying to stay busy, when Ava's car pulled into the driveway. She looked tired, still wearing her honeymoon glow, but with worry lines around her eyes. James waited in the passenger seat, giving me a supportive nod through the windshield. Dad, we need to talk. Shouldn't you be on a beach somewhere drinking cocktails with umbrellas in them? We cut the honeymoon short. Mom called yesterday, crying. She says you're trying to destroy her life. I set down my wrench and really looked at my daughter. She was caught in the middle of something she didn't create, torn between loyalty to both parents. Sit down, kiddo. Let me tell you what's really been happening. I walked her through everything I'd discovered, the fake billing, the non-existent companies, the real estate scams. I showed her the documents I'd photographed, explained how Lionel had been using Dana's license to create fraudulent transactions. Ava listened without interrupting, her expression growing more troubled with each revelation. Mom really didn't know? She asked finally. I pulled out my phone and showed her the correspondence I'd found between Dana and Lionel, messages discussing their business partnership and how to maximize revenue opportunities using her real estate connections. You tell me. Ava read through the messages, her face falling. She knew. Maybe not the full extent, but she knew something wasn't right. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know this isn't how you wanted to start your marriage. She hugged me tightly. I'm not sorry you found out, and I'm not sorry you're fighting back. Mom made her choice. That afternoon, I drove to the offices of the State Real Estate Commission. I'd made an appointment with an investigator, claiming I had information about potential license violations. Margaret Torres was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been investigating real estate fraud for over a decade. She listened to my story without comment, taking notes and asking pointed questions about dates and documentation. You have copies of these documents? She asked. I handed her a folder containing everything I'd found in Lionel's office. Financial records, fake invoices, correspondence showing intent to defraud. She flipped through the papers, her expression growing more serious. Mr. Gray, if these allegations are accurate, your wife could lose her real estate license. She could also face criminal charges. I understand that. Are you prepared for the consequences? This isn't just about your marriage anymore. This could destroy her career and her reputation. I thought about Dana laughing with Lionel at the wedding rehearsal, about her dismissive attitude when I'd tried to discuss the vendor arrangements, about the months of lies and secret meetings. She made her choice, I said. Now she can live with the consequences. Margaret nodded. We'll open an investigation immediately. I'll need you to sign a formal complaint. While I was signing paperwork, my phone buzzed with a text from Will. Check Channel 7 news website. Now. I pulled up the site and found a story that made me freeze. Local businessman accused of wedding fraud scheme. The article detailed allegations against Lionel Burke, including quotes from several vendors who'd come forward after the wedding incident. The reporter had somehow gotten hold of financial documents showing the fake billing arrangements. My phone rang immediately. Dana's number. Michael, what have you done? Her voice was shaking. I gave some hard-working people the information they needed to get paid. The news is calling Lionel a con artist. They're saying I helped him defraud clients. Did you? Silence. Dana, did you help him create fake real estate transactions? It wasn't supposed to be fraud. He said it was just creative financing, that we were helping people who couldn't get traditional loans. And you believe that? I wanted to believe it. Her voice broke. I wanted to believe he cared about me, not just what I could do for his business. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the months of lies, the dismissive way she'd treated me at our daughter's wedding. Where are you now? At Lionel's apartment. The police were here this morning asking questions. His lawyer says we shouldn't talk to anyone without legal representation. Good advice. You're going to need it. Michael, please. Can we meet somewhere? I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, Dana. You chose him over our marriage. Now deal with the consequences. I hung up and finished my business with the Real Estate Commission. That evening, the story exploded across local media. Channel 7's investigative team had done their homework, interviewing vendors, tracking down victims of Lionel's previous schemes, and getting quotes from law enforcement about the ongoing investigation. Dana's name appeared in several articles as Lionel's business partner and the licensed realtor who'd facilitated several questionable transactions. Her photo ran alongside his on the evening news. My phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting quotes, neighbors asking if the stories were true, former colleagues expressing shock and offering support. I ignored most of the calls, but I did answer when Margaret Torres called from the Real Estate Commission. Mr. Gray, I wanted to let you know that we've suspended your wife's real estate license pending our investigation. We've also referred the matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. How long will the investigation take? Several months, probably. These cases are complicated, and we want to make sure we have all the facts before we make final determinations. Several months. Dana's career was effectively over, even if she eventually avoided criminal charges. No one would trust a realtor who'd been involved in a fraud scandal, regardless of the legal outcome. Tuesday morning brought news that Lionel had been arrested on multiple fraud charges. The story made the front page of the city newspaper, complete with a photo of him being led away in handcuffs. I was reading the article over coffee when someone knocked on my door. Dana stood on my porch, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Can I come in? I stepped aside and let her enter. She looked around the house like she was seeing it for the first time, the home we'd shared for 15 years, now feeling like neutral territory. I've left Lionel, she said without preamble. Smart move, considering he's in jail. I left him before he was arrested, when I realized what he'd really been doing. She sat down on the couch, her hands shaking slightly. Michael, I know you hate me right now, but I need you to understand something. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. You had an affair, helped him run financial scams, and lied to me for months. I was lonely. The words came out in a rush. You'd lost your job, you were depressed, you barely talked to me anymore. And Lionel made me feel important, valuable. He said we were building something together. You were. A criminal enterprise. Dana flinched. I thought it was legitimate business, creative financing for people who needed help. Even if that were true, it doesn't excuse the affair. She started crying then, the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that come from complete emotional collapse. Part of me wanted to comfort her, out of habit if nothing else. But the larger part remembered her dismissive attitude at the wedding, her willingness to let Lionel take credit for generosity he couldn't afford. What do you want from me, Dana? I want you to call off the investigation. Tell them you made a mistake, that you misunderstood what you saw. I stared at her. You want me to lie to protect you? I want you to save our marriage. Our marriage ended the first time you slept with Lionel. Everything since then has just been cleanup. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. So that's it? 25 years, and you're just throwing it all away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. I walked to the front door and held it open. You need to leave now. And Dana, don't come back unless you're here to pick up your things. After she left, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Relief, mostly, and a strange sense of anticipation, like I was finally free to move forward with the rest of my life. My phone rang. Will's number. You see the news about Lionel's arrest? Yeah. Dana was just here asking me to call off the investigation. Jesus, what did you tell her? I told her to leave. How are you holding up? I looked around the house, at the photos on the walls showing happier times, at the furniture we'd chosen together, at the life we'd built before it all fell apart. I'm good, I said, and realized I meant it. Better than I've been in months. What's next? I smiled, thinking about the final phase of my plan. Now I finish what they started. The next few weeks brought a parade of consequences that even I hadn't fully anticipated. Lionel's arrest had triggered a domino effect throughout the local real estate community, with investigators uncovering a network of fraudulent transactions dating back 3 years. Dana's name appeared in more and more reports as the investigation expanded. The Real Estate Commission had suspended her license indefinitely, and the district attorney's office was reportedly considering charges against her as well. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines, feeling like an architect who'd designed a controlled demolition and was now watching the building come down exactly as planned. Thursday afternoon, I was at Will's bar helping him prep for the evening rush when Dana's friend Tara walked in. She looked around nervously before approaching me. Michael, we need to talk. About what? About Dana, and about what you're doing to her. I continued, wiping down glasses. I'm not doing anything to Dana. I'm just letting the legal system handle the fraud investigation. You know what I mean. You started all this. You could end it if you wanted to. Will appeared from the back room, carrying a case of beer. He nodded at Tara but didn't say anything, sensing the tension. Tara, your friend made her choices. She chose to have an affair. She chose to help Lionel with his schemes, and she chose to lie to me about all of it. Now she's dealing with the consequences. She's losing everything. Her career, her reputation, her marriage. Doesn't 25 years mean anything to you? I set down the glass I'd been cleaning and looked at her directly. It meant everything to me. That's why this hurts so much. Then why are you destroying her? I'm not destroying her. She destroyed herself. Tara's face flushed with anger. You're enjoying this. You're getting off on watching her suffer. Actually, I'm not. I wish none of this had happened. I wish my wife hadn't decided to sleep with a con artist and help him defraud people. But she did. And now, We all have to live with the results. She made a mistake. She made a series of deliberate choices over a period of months. There's a difference. Tara stared at me for a moment, then turned and walked out without another word. Will shook his head. Dana's friends are turning on you pretty hard. Let them. They all knew what Lionel was, and they let Dana walk into his trap anyway. Their opinions don't mean much to me. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a gravelly voice I didn't recognize said, "Michael Gray?" "Yes. This is Detective Rodriguez with the Financial Crimes Unit. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss the Lionel Burke investigation." "Am I in trouble?" "No, sir. We just need to clarify some details about how you obtained certain documents." We arranged to meet at the police station Friday afternoon. I spent the evening going over my story, making sure I had my facts straight about the timeline and my methods. Detective Rodriguez turned out to be a tired-looking man in his 40s who'd probably seen every type of financial scam imaginable. He listened to my account without judgment, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. "So you entered Mr. Burke's office using an expired access card?" "I followed the cleaning crew upstairs. The card just got me past the lobby." "And you photographed documents without permission?" "I photographed documents that were sitting in unlocked filing cabinets in an office building where I had legitimate access." He nodded. "The district attorney's office has reviewed your methods. While not ideal, nothing you did rises to the level of criminal activity. The documents you provided have been crucial to our investigation." "What about my wife? What about her? Is she going to be charged?" Detective Rodriguez studied me carefully. "Would it matter to you if she was?" I thought about it. Dana was the mother of my daughter, my partner for 25 years. Despite everything that had happened, I didn't want to see her in prison. "It would matter," I said finally. "I want her held accountable, but I don't want to see her life completely destroyed." "The DA is still reviewing her case. A lot will depend on her cooperation with our investigation and her willingness to testify against Burke." That evening, Ava called with news that surprised me. "Dad, I talked to Mom today. She's agreed to testify against Lionel." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, honestly. It means she's finally accepting responsibility for what happened." "Where is she staying?" "With Grandma Lucille. It's not going well. Grandma's pretty angry about the whole situation." I could imagine. Lucille had always prized social status above everything else. Having her daughter involved in a fraud scandal would be her worst nightmare. "Dad, there's something else. Mom says Lionel's lawyer contacted her. He wants her to claim that you blackmailed her into participating in the real estate deals." "What?" "He's trying to build a defense that portrays Lionel as a victim of your manipulation, that you forced Mom to help with the schemes so you could expose them later." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Even from jail, he's still trying to con people. Mom refused. She told his lawyer that you had nothing to do with any of it. That surprised me. Dana was protecting me, even though our marriage was over. "How is she doing?" "Not good. She's lost weight, she's not sleeping. I think the reality of what she's done is finally hitting her." I felt a stab of sympathy for Dana, followed immediately by anger at myself for caring. She'd made her choices. The fact that she was suffering the consequences didn't erase what she'd done. Saturday morning, I was reading the newspaper when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a man I didn't recognize, well-dressed, but with nervous eyes. "Michael Gray? My name is David Chen. I'm Lionel Burke's attorney." "I have nothing to say to you." "Please, just 5 minutes. I think we can help each other." Against my better judgment, I let him in. He sat on the edge of my couch like he was ready to run at any moment. "Mr. Gray, my client is facing serious charges. The prosecution's case relies heavily on documents you provided and testimony from your wife." "Good. But there might be a way to resolve this that benefits everyone involved." I leaned back in my chair. I'm listening. Mr. Burke is prepared to plead guilty to reduced charges and make full restitution to all victims. In exchange, the prosecution would agree not to charge your wife with any crimes. What's the catch? You would need to testify that your wife was an unwitting victim of Mr. Burke's manipulation, that she had no knowledge of any fraudulent activity. I stared at him. You want me to lie under oath. I want you to help your wife avoid prison. By committing perjury. Chen leaned forward. Mr. Gray, your wife made mistakes, but she doesn't deserve to have her life destroyed. This arrangement would allow her to rebuild her career, restore her reputation, and move forward with her life. And what does Lionel get out of it? A reduced sentence, 5 years instead of 15. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where Dana and I used to take evening walks when we were happy. No, I said finally. Mr. Gray, no. Your client is a con artist who seduced my wife and used her to defraud innocent people. He deserves whatever sentence he gets. And your wife? I turned to face him. My wife made her choices. She can live with the consequences. Chen gathered his papers and headed for the door. You're making a mistake, Mr. Gray. This offer won't be available indefinitely. I'm not making a mistake. I'm finally doing the right thing. After he left, I called Detective Rodriguez and told him about the attorney's visit. He thanked me for the information and assured me that the prosecution's case didn't depend on any deals with Lionel. That afternoon, I drove to Lucille's house to see Dana. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed closure, or maybe I just wanted to see how she was handling everything. Dana answered the door herself, looking older than I'd ever seen her. The stress had aged her years in just a few weeks. Michael, I didn't expect to see you. Can we talk? She led me to Lucille's back patio, away from her mother's disapproving glares. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Lionel's lawyer came to see me, I said finally. I know. He wants you to lie for me. I told him no. Dana nodded. I figured you would. I told him the same thing. You did? I'm done lying, Michael, about everything. She looked at me with eyes that held more honesty than I'd seen in months. I know you'll probably never forgive me. I know our marriage is over, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. Not just because I got caught, but because I hurt you. Because I threw away something good for something that was never real. I felt tears threatening and pushed them back. Why, Dana? Why did you do it? Because I was scared. You'd lost your job, we were struggling financially, and I felt like everything was falling apart. Lionel made me feel secure, important. He made me believe I could have more than what we had. What we had was real. I know that now, but by the time I figured it out, it was too late. We sat quietly for a while, two people who'd shared a life trying to figure out how it had all gone so wrong. What happens now? She asked. Now you testify against Lionel, accept whatever consequences come from that, and try to rebuild your life. And us? I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find some remnant of the woman I'd fallen in love with 25 years ago. She was still there, underneath the guilt and the fear and the consequences of her choices, but it didn't matter anymore. There is no us, Dana. There hasn't been for a long time. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know. I stood to leave, then turned back. For what it's worth, I hope things work out for you. I hope you find a way to be happy. Thank you, she whispered. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The anger was still there, probably always would be. But underneath it was a sense of completion, like I'd finally closed a chapter that needed to end. My phone buzzed with a text from Ava. Dinner tomorrow? James is cooking. I smiled and texted back, wouldn't miss it. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like it belonged to me. 3 months later, I stood in the lobby of the courthouse, watching Dana walk up the steps to testify against Lionel Burke. She looked composed, professional in a dark suit that probably cost more than she could afford now. Her real estate career was over, but she was trying to maintain some dignity through the legal proceedings. I wasn't there to support her. I was there to watch justice finally catch up with the man who'd helped destroy my marriage. The trial had been front-page news for weeks. Lionel's defense team had tried every angle, claiming he was the victim of a vengeful husband's scheme, arguing that the real estate deals were legitimate business arrangements, even suggesting that Dana had masterminded the whole operation. None of it worked. The evidence was too solid, the paper trail too clear. Will joined me in the hallway outside the courtroom. "How are you holding up?" "Good. Ready for this to be over." "Dana looks nervous." I glanced toward where she sat with the prosecutor, going over her testimony one final time. She should be. Her whole future depends on how well she explains her role in this mess. The courtroom was packed when we filed in. Local reporters, victims of Lionel's schemes, curious onlookers drawn by the scandal. I found a seat in the back where I could observe without being noticed. Lionel sat at the defendant's table, looking nothing like the confident con artist who'd charmed his way into my wife's bed. Months in jail awaiting trial had taken their toll. His expensive suits had been replaced by a standard-issue jumpsuit, his carefully styled hair was unkempt, and his trademark smile was nowhere to be seen. Dana took the witness stand with steady steps, but I could see her hands trembling as she placed them on the Bible to be sworn in. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Walsh, walked Dana through her testimony methodically. How she'd met Lionel, how he'd convinced her to use her real estate license for his deals, how she'd gradually realized something wasn't right, but had been too deep to back out. "Mrs. Gray," Walsh said, "did you understand that the transactions you were facilitating were fraudulent?" Dana paused, looking directly at Lionel for the first time since taking the stand. "Not initially. Mr. Burke presented them as creative financing solutions for clients who couldn't get traditional loans, but over time, I began to suspect that some of the companies and clients weren't real." "And what did you do when you had these suspicions?" "I asked Mr. Burke about them. He assured me that everything was legitimate, that I was just seeing the paperwork side of complex business arrangements." "Did you believe him?" Another pause. Dana's eyes found mine in the courtroom, and I saw something I hadn't expected: genuine remorse. "I wanted to believe him," she said quietly. "I wanted to believe him because by then our relationship had become personal, and I didn't want to face the possibility that I'd been deceived." The defense attorney, a slick operator named Harrison, tried to paint Dana as either a mastermind or a victim, depending on which argument served his client better. But Dana stuck to her story. She'd been seduced and manipulated, but she'd also made conscious choices to participate in activities she'd known were questionable. When it was over, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Lionel's sentencing hearing was scheduled for the following month, but the judge's comments made it clear he was looking at serious prison time. The victims' impact statements alone took 2 hours, with people describing how Lionel's schemes had cost them their savings, their homes, their trust in the system. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around everyone connected to the case. I managed to slip away without being interviewed, but I saw Dana cornered by a group of journalists asking about her role and her relationship with Lionel. "Mrs. Gray, do you take responsibility for your part in these crimes?" "Yes," she said simply. "I made terrible choices, and I hurt a lot of people. I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life." "What about your marriage? Are you and your husband reconciling?" Dana looked tired, older than her years. "My marriage is over. That's one of the consequences of my actions." I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness watching her face the media scrutiny. This was what I'd wanted, for her to be held accountable, to face the public shame of her choices. But seeing it happen didn't bring the satisfaction I'd expected. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Detective Rodriguez. The Real Estate Commission had concluded their investigation and decided not to pursue criminal charges against Dana, citing her cooperation with law enforcement and her status as a victim of Lionel's manipulation. She'd still lost her real estate license permanently, and her reputation in the community was destroyed, but she wouldn't be going to prison. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Part of me thought she deserved more punishment. Part of me was relieved that Ava wouldn't have to visit her mother in jail. Spring arrived with a warmth that felt like possibility. I'd started my own small architecture firm, working out of a converted garage and taking on residential projects that the big firms wouldn't touch. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Ava and James had settled into married life, and she'd started graduate school in social work. She visited regularly, but we rarely talked about Dana or the trial. That chapter was closed. One Saturday morning, I was working on plans for a small office building when my phone rang. Dana's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hello, Dana. Michael, I hope it's okay that I called. I wanted to let you know that I'm leaving town." "Where are you going?" "Phoenix. My sister found me a job with a property management company. It's not real estate sales, but it's something." "Good for you. I also wanted to tell you that I've filed for divorce. I know you probably want to handle it yourself, but I thought it would be easier if I took care of the paperwork." I set down my pencil and leaned back in my chair. "That's probably best. Michael, I know this doesn't change anything, but I want you to know that I'm getting counseling. I'm trying to understand how I made such terrible choices, how I hurt the people I loved most. I hope it helps." "Me too." She paused. "I also want you to know that despite everything that's happened, I don't regret our marriage. The good years were real even if I forgot that for a while." I felt tears threatening again. "I don't regret them either. Take care of yourself, Michael, and take care of Ava." "I will." After she hung up, I sat in my garage office, surrounded by blueprints and building plans, thinking about the architecture of relationships, how they're built on foundations of trust and shared dreams, how they require constant maintenance to stay strong, how they can collapse suddenly when the structural integrity is compromised. Dana and I had built something good together, but she'd undermined the foundation until the whole thing came crashing down. Now we were both picking through the rubble, trying to salvage what we could and move forward. My phone buzzed with a text from Ava. "Dinner Sunday? I'm making your favorite pot roast." I smiled and texted back. "Wouldn't miss it." Outside, spring was turning the world green again. New growth, new possibilities, new structures to be built on stronger foundations. I picked up my pencil and went back to work, designing something that would last. 6 months later, I was putting the finishing touches on a custom home design when Will called with news that shouldn't have surprised me, but somehow did. Lionel Burke died in prison last night. Heart attack. I set down my drafting tools and tried to process the information. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. Empty, I guess. Like the whole thing just ended with a whimper instead of the bang I expected." "Justice doesn't always feel satisfying," Will said. "Sometimes it just feels final." Final. That was the right word. With Lionel gone, there would be no appeals, no chance for him to charm his way out of consequences, no possibility of him hurting anyone else the way he'd hurt Dana and me. I called Ava to let her know, figuring she'd want to hear it from me rather than see it on the news. "How's Mom going to take this?" she asked. "I don't know. Do you want me to call her?" "No, I'll do it. Despite everything, she cared about him. She deserves to hear it from family." That evening, I drove to the cemetery where my parents were buried and stood among the headstones thinking about mortality and consequences. Lionel had died in prison, his reputation destroyed, his schemes exposed, his victims finally vindicated. Dana was in Phoenix, trying to rebuild a life from the wreckage of her choices. She'd lost her career, her marriage, her standing in the community, but she was alive and free and hopefully learning to make better decisions. And I was here, standing in a graveyard at sunset, finally understanding that revenge isn't about the satisfaction of watching your enemies suffer. It's about the peace that comes from knowing that actions have consequences, that truth eventually surfaces, that justice, however imperfect, eventually prevails. My phone rang. Ava. Dad, I just talked to Mom. She's okay. Sad, but okay. She said to tell you thank you. For what? For not destroying her completely when you had the chance. For letting the legal system handle things instead of taking personal revenge. I laughed, thinking about the sugar in Lionel's gas tank, the sardines in his air conditioning, the spray paint on his precious car. Tell her she's welcome. Dad, there's something else. James and I have some news. Good news, I hope. The best. We're pregnant. I felt a smile spread across my face, genuine joy replacing the complex emotions I'd been carrying for months. That's wonderful, sweetheart. How far along? Just 8 weeks, but we wanted you to be the first to know. A grandchild. New life, new hope, new reasons to build something lasting and good. I love you, kiddo. I love you too, Dad. I hung up and walked back to my car, leaving the cemetery and the ghosts of the past behind. Tomorrow I'd start designing a nursery addition for Ava and James's house, something beautiful and strong and built to last. The future was calling, and for the first time in years, I was ready to answer. 1 year later, I stood in my daughter's living room holding my granddaughter, Emma, and marveling at how something so small could make the world feel so full of possibility. Ava was radiant in the way new mothers are, tired but glowing with purpose. James hovered nearby, still amazed that he was responsible for this tiny, perfect person. She has your eyes, Dad, Ava said, settling into the rocking chair I'd built for her. She has your stubbornness, I replied, as Emma gripped my finger with surprising strength. My phone buzzed with a text message, Dana's number, which I still hadn't deleted after all this time. Congratulations on your granddaughter. Ava sent me a photo. She's beautiful. I showed the message to Ava, who nodded approvingly. I've been sending Mom updates. She's doing well in Phoenix, got promoted at work, started dating someone new. Good for her. And I meant it. Dana had paid the price for her choices, lost her career, her marriage, her place in our community. But she was rebuilding, making better decisions, trying to become someone worthy of forgiveness. I texted back, "Thank you. She's perfect." A few minutes later, another message. "I'm glad you found happiness, Michael. You deserve it." I looked around Ava's living room, at the family photos on the mantel, at the toys scattered on the floor, at my daughter and son-in-law building their life together with honesty and commitment. This was happiness, not the absence of pain or betrayal, but the presence of love and trust and hope for the future. Emma made a small sound and opened her eyes, looking up at me with the serious expression babies get when they're trying to figure out the world. "What do you think, little one?" I whispered. "Ready to see what we can build together?" She yawned and closed her eyes again, trusting and content in the arms of someone who would never let her down. I kissed the top of her head and settled deeper into the chair, holding my granddaughter and planning the foundations of her future. Outside, the sun was setting on another day, another chance to get things right.